On today's episode of The Unwritten Rule, had some GM talk, had a good fan question from a couple shows ago about the Mizzou men's basketball GM. So we talked about that, just kind of went in depth, gave our thoughts on the question, their thoughts on the GM, and gave our own. Kenny, of course, was at the event Dennis Gates spoke at and gave Dennis Gates his take about it and what he said in terms of what he's looking for, qualities in the GM. Just kind of talked about the role, what it might look like for Mizzou. Dropped a couple of names. Obviously, there's no candidate shortlist or anything, so nothing crazy there. But yeah, just kind of talked about the overview of the role in general. So put your thoughts down below. Comment if you're watching on the YouTube, listening on Spotify. Definitely comment your thoughts on what you're looking for the GM role for Mizzou men's basketball. So that was a great conversation. Also had a couple of items. Mizzou hired a new assistant coach since we last had a show, so we talked about that as well as a football kind of pulse on where things are at with scholarship spots and players left in the portals. Kenny dropped some good names to watch going forward as well. And then we finished up with a nice quick hit segment. So good show as per usual to get your weekend started. Happy May. Enjoy. And we'll get started. The Unwritten Rule starts right now.
Marcel, where are you going with that disc? You are not putting that on again. Marcel, okay, if you press that button, you are in very, very big trouble.
Attention. Everybody stop what you're doing. It's time for The Unwritten Rule, a Mizzou sports podcast brought to you by the Believe Network, alongside Payton Haverman and Kenny Van Doren. Here is your host, Jack Knowlton.
Welcome back to The Unwritten Rule. Today is Friday, May 2nd. Happy May, gents. We're inching closer to summer, and we've got some news items, and then we wanted to have that convo. I mentioned it a couple shows back about the GM for Mizzou men's basketball. Kenny was at a summit. What do you want to call it, Kenny? A conference? I don't know what the event was exactly with that Dennis Gates was at.
Caravan. I think that was an easier word because that's what they call it. They call it the Zoo to You tour.
That's right.
It's a fan caravan.
Fan caravan. With Dennis Gates. So he'll have some notes from Dennis about the position. And I know some of you gracious viewers had been kind of curious about that. And I want to talk about it. I think it's really interesting. So we'll talk about that in a second. But I want to start, Kenny, I'm going to throw it over to you because we have a couple just football. We have one football and one hoops item to hit on. One we didn't get to last time about a potential portal addition. Payton has been clamoring for some secondary help from Mizzou. But they're not going to get it from the man on screen, Kenny. What's the latest for Mizzou at corner in the portal with the guys still in and another one off the board here? And Emmanuel Carnley, a guy we didn't hit on last show. What's the latest with him? I know he was a potential Mizzou target.
Yeah, we got it confirmed right when we're done recording, so we just kind of pushed it back. And it's fine. I mean, he committed to Virginia on Tuesday, so nothing really to talk about there. He was kind of in the same situation as Mekhi Bayer. He started off at Arizona, committed to Miami, and then entered the portal again. So he entered the portal twice in the last 6 months. It's one of those things too, just with Mizzou, is that there's some guys out there that have been connected to. Elijah Culp from Charlotte is another one that kind of popped up recently. Mark Cannon Jr. is still on the board, someone that Xavier Lloyd played with at Illinois State. But the thing for Mizzou is they want a body in there that has multiple years of eligibility at the cornerback position. They lost some guys, Jamarian Wayne losing, depth there. And then, Jaron Sensabaugh too in that secondary near the end of the first portal window. So it's more so like this is just kind of like on the back, the back end of the list of needs. Nothing is really, of a need. Drinkwitz even kind of talked about it. They're kind of just moving at their own pace, not trying to rush anything. On Tuesday when he spoke. And one of the big things is just, getting the best players available. You're not necessarily finding starters in the second spring window. I know Payton's not a huge fan of it right now. And it's more so just filling that depth, filling any needs you might have, or just trying to find competition, which they're doing too at the offensive line position. A guy that they're actually hosting right now on Thursday as we're recording this is Grand Valley State offensive tackle Jalen Caldwell. He's got some, pretty big interest. Kentucky's out there, West Virginia, Florida State. There's schools that are interested in him. He's a Chicago kid, Division II. So he's actually getting to go through the transfer process, or not, an actual recruiting process for the first time because he went Division II. So this is probably a good opportunity for him to go out there and see some schools. Another guy we talked about is Braylon Henderson. And for Jalen Caldwell, I was told by his agent that he's supposed to make a decision by the end of the week. With Braylon Henderson, another guy they hosted earlier in the week, looking at Ole Miss and Miami right now too. near the end of the week. That's a defensive tackle, someone I will take full responsibility for throwing him out there early to you guys, even though you don't remember it.
He wants him at Mizzou so bad just to be right.
Yeah, just to be right. But that's just, defensive tackle depth, different kind of size body to bring in that room. And then this still counts as a 2025 signee in the high school class, high school JUCO ranks. And that's Joshua Shanklin, who should be coming to a decision here at the end of the week too. He's visited a bunch of schools, West Virginia also, Ole Miss, a lot of overlap with West Virginia, Ole Miss right now, and then Arizona State too. He's from California. He's an Oakland product, played at a JUCO, was unstoppable at the JUCO ranks. He became a full qualifier, which means he can go to the next level as a freshman from his JUCO year, and he'll have 4 years of eligibility. So with 3 roster spots to fill, I think the perfect world is that you land all 3 of those guys. You bring depth to that edge position where you lost 2 bodies in the transfer window, a guy with a lot of eligibility can develop. I know they talk about, production over development, but still good to have guys in there that have multiple years of eligibility, competition, depth for defensive tackle. And then Drinkwitz said they still don't have their best 5 set for the next year in the offensive line. So if you get a guy like Jalen Caldwell, that's also a plus at that offensive tackle spot. And I think if one of those guys doesn't commit, maybe they do turn more of the focus to cornerback. They're still really looking for a guy with multiple years of eligibility. I think Colton Hood is another name that came up recently. He's actually a twin, but he started his career at Auburn, then was at Colorado recently. But I also read like Tennessee and I think Miami are 2 big schools for him right now. So I don't think they're in a rush, with a lot of this stuff. They're still trying to wait on the house settlement and roster limits and 105 limit, but 85 scholarships. But there's 3 scholarships left, and that's kind of where the names that are out there right now.
Yeah, the all that stuff being in flux, I'm sure can't help an already kind of thin spring window where, like you said, you're not getting any major ads, guys that are you're expecting to be superstars next year. But yeah, there's the latest. Kenny's got all of it. Payton, I don't know if you have any thoughts. I was kind of curious about that. Like, is there a worry to you, Payton? Like when you see these spring guys, I suppose spring practice is already done, so maybe it doesn't really make any difference. But in terms of adding these guys late, like, is there a cap you think? Like when Mizzou wants to have these guys on campus, just have them around? I don't know if maybe that's a silly question, but. I don't know. You keep kind of pushing these things back. I know there's not like a deadline for everyone to be committed by. Some guys don't end up anywhere after they enter the portal. We hear stories about that all the time. But I don't know, Payton. If you're like a Mizzou, do you want to get your roster finalized still by a certain date, or is it just you keep fighting for these guys as long as they're willing to go through this process?
I really doubt they care when they get these guys. They added Marcus Clark in the middle of a season one time, so.
Not the middle of the season. It was week 1.
Yeah, week 1, whatever. That's even worse. I'm kidding. But I don't think there's much of a timeline. They'll take the last few spots whenever they take them. Quite frankly, at this point, I don't think you're getting many guys that are going to be big-time contributors this year.
Yeah, no doubt.
With that too, I mean, like there's nothing going on right now.
Right.
Yeah, they're out of pads. They're still working out and going through the motions. And Drinkwitz even said he was doing like an indoor walk on the track at the facilities, and Bo Pribula was just down there by himself working on his passing and throwing. So there's still guys going through the motions, but they're not on pads, hitting each other. And the high schoolers aren't even there yet. The regular enrollees, not the early guys. Mm-hmm. They don't enroll, I think, until like the first weekend in June. So there's still a lot of time for people to get on campus. And I think with Shanklin too, he talked about where he's just going to take his time, but I think he also, just wants to get it set in stone. But he said, he'll show up in the summer wherever he goes.
There you go. Some notes on just Mizzou off season, kind of finalizing that roster. Like Kenny said, what'd you say? 3 spots left that they're kind of looking to fill there, and
3 scholarships. And
right.
I think there's room for maybe 1 or 2 more preferred walk-ons. They did add a preferred walk-on quarterback at a St. Louis area in Cameron Ellaby. Kind of a cool story. His brother Caleb was a Western Michigan product. Mizzou fans might know him. He went to the NFL draft, didn't get drafted. He got picked up and kind of moved around there for a little bit. So they're still kind of looking at just some guys that can fill out the roster and help the scout team.
We'll keep an eye on it. The other note over to hoops, and we're going to talk about a bunch. Now we're just going to talk hoop staff basically, because we got a bunch of GM stuff I want to get to. But a news item from a couple of days ago we didn't hit on last show. Mizzou is another assistant for men's basketball. They added Steve Wright, continuing the lovely triangle between Mizzou, Duquesne, and Cleveland State. Steve Wright comes in, was part of Dennis Gates' staff at Cleveland State, but most recently was at Duquesne for 2 seasons, which meant, of course, he was part of that Duquesne staff, I believe, that pulled off, or no, that went to, what was it, the tournament as an 11 seed, I think, an upset of 6. So I had some tournament experience there, but another guy who Dennis knows very well will be on staff. Obviously, Mizzou having to replace a couple of coaches. Payton, Kenny, what do you think of this new hire, Steve Wright? It seems to me, certainly not anything out of left field based on, his resume and his experience with Dennis.
I'll be fully transparent. The only thing I know about him is that he's in this funny coaching triangle that you could really draw an absurd looking coaching tree out of between Duquesne, like you said, Duquesne, Cleveland State, Missouri. Other notable alums in this tree are Drew Joyce II, who is now the head coach at Duquesne, was an assistant under Dennis Gates at Cleveland State, then under Keith Dambrot at Duquesne. Now is the head coach at Duquesne. Rob Summers is in this mix. Just an absurd amount of funny names, kind of. But I obviously, Mizzou has got to try and just lock down the staff quickly. They still have 2 scholarship spots available for the basketball team as well that they got to fill.
This is big in recruiting. One of the big things that Gates hit on just on Tuesday is that he talked about you just in the grassroots when you get into those Kentucky, North Carolina.
Glad you said this, Kenny.
South Carolina. Like, he has a lot of experience just recruiting 4 or 5 stars, like guys that, you want on campus. Like, big name that came up recently. He's a Florida guy, but, Tony Bryant, Mizzou's kind of been in contact with him in a while. They got an official visit set with him in September. That's good. Just a good step forward. Don't really know if that'll, be the first domino and, getting his attention to commit there. But, having guys on staff that have experience trying to go after these big time guys and replacing someone in CY who had a lot of experience recruiting as well, especially some of these top talents. It's big. And one of the big things too, he mentioned, he has experience overseas too. And I think we can probably talk about him now is Elise Asui, who's Italian recruit right now that some schools are looking at, according to Joe Tipton, Wisconsin, Texas, Missouri, and Clemson were some of the schools that kind of went after him. I wonder if that kind of helps too, just with Steve's experience just overseas and contacts, because that's just a huge thing Dennis Gates talked about. He's like, the past 2 decades, I've compounded all these contacts, and this will get into the GM conversation too, that he just knows so many of these high school coaches, so many of these agents and recruits and just people across the country that, Steve Wright has the same thing. I think that was just one of the biggest things. You want a guy who's plugged into everything. And I think this is just a good step forward in replacing, what you've lost on that staff. And I think just the resume kind of speaks for himself for where he's kind of been.
Yeah, so I didn't fully read his resume when I kind of introduced him, but if you didn't read his little profile on Mizzou, to kind of articulate what Kenny's talking about, played in Germany and Finland from 2007 to 2011, was at Bowling Green in college. And then to me, the one that stuck out is you mentioned the grassroots stuff. Like, he's coached in Akron, actually for King James AAU, our king. His team coached for an Under Armour team in Columbus, so he's got some Ohio roots there. I thought that was really big. He coached Darius Baisley.
Yeah, that was the coolest thing I saw.
Yeah, last guy to go from high school straight to the pros, Darius Baisley.
Yeah, so that was a big thing that Gates talked about too, is he's been on the forefront of just NIL too,
right.
Kind of seeing it before it really took place, seeing some of these guys go from the high school ranks to college, or to skipping college and going pro and making money right away. So he kind of has that understanding of what a lot of the, the movement of money and how things are just kind of moving up to at the same time.
Yeah. Baisley, of course, if people don't know his story, he transferred high schools, I think, to the one that Steve Wright coached, and then graduated, I think was committed somewhere at one point, and ended up working for, I think it was New Balance on an internship. That's what he did. And then just trained for a year, went to the NBA draft. Really interesting story. But yeah, so Steve Wright coached him and then has a bunch on the AAU circuit as well. That's what I thought was big, because you just hear, you never know. I mean, either there could be guys, Kenny mentioned the one in Florida. There could be guys who are 14, 15 right now that Steve Wright happened to cross paths with coaching an AAU game or an AAU team that come back up. And that allows Mizzou to get in these top 4s and compete for these guys when they get, to 17 and senior year of high school and committing and whatnot. So that's good. He's got some important connections. So yeah, excited to see how he does. And yeah, 2 scholarship spots still left. Still need some shooting for this team. But that's not what we're going to talk about for now. We're going to stay on the kind of GM staff conversations. And Kenny, I'm going to ask you this first, and we're going to get to, I know we had one listener in particular. I want to touch on his comment, but I want to talk some GM stuff from Mizzou men's basketball. We know they're exploring it. What did Dennis Gates, Kenny, say about it at this caravan that you attended? I know, obviously, Dennis, sometimes not a man of articulation that's super insightful, but what were his words about what he's looking for in the GM spot? Because I think it's an interesting conversation, because in both football and basketball, there's kind of different things that teams look for with this position. What did Dennis say about it in terms of who he's kind of targeting, qualify, or that, to get a person that's qualified? I say as my brain fell asleep for a second there. What did Dennis say about what he's looking for in a GM from Mizzou?
I'll start off with just one point that he was asked, how long have you kind of been looking at this, this opportunity to add a GM role? And he said, right away when he joined Mizzou, he knew early on, what that role kind of meant. And it's very hard to recruit when you don't have staffers, assistants. I think that also kind of plays in a role, seeing a little bit of slowdown in the transfer portal as you're trying to finish those last 2 spots or fill those last 2 roster spots. So getting a GM is big. And I think the one big thing that really stood out to me is when we talked about it is connections, agent connections. He does so much when you look at what Gates has, just under, how many hats he has to put on: the GM hat, president of basketball operations hat, scouting hat. There's just so many things that kind of play into that role. You just need someone that comes in and can handle it from a business point of view as well. You need an actual GM like you're seeing in sports, in professional sports. This is a professional sport now. I really think that you can confidently say college sports. I mean, some teams make more money than pro teams out there or across the world. You're just doing so much, and you need someone that can handle those finances and handle just roster building as well, and has that understanding. So I think they're definitely looking for someone that has just a good understanding, that's been around president basketball operations. It's been on that side of it, helping build rosters, helping scout, helping talk to these agents, talk to these parents. Because one of the biggest things he says, we just sacrificed so much over these last couple of years, time away from family during the off season, or, nights of sleep, because they just have to do so much all at once. So I think one of the big things is just those connections and understanding agents and understanding the backside of NIL and what people don't see. And I think that will kind of be the big part of what he's looking for once he hires his GM.
Yeah. And we don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, any timeline for when that is going to get decided, which, is probably a good thing. You probably don't want to put any pressure point on it. The sooner the better, I'm sure, to get started in that recruiting and doing all of that backroom stuff. I want to touch on the comment from a listener. Shout out to Sam, MIZ Sports. Thank you for listening. And it's fun. We'll have to do this more. People definitely comment stuff, because that's what we like to drive, especially in the off season. Please comment stuff, because we will talk about it, and that can drive kind of our discussions when there's not a million news items or games to talk about. But anyway, so Sam MIZ Sports kind of inspired this, and this was just what he posted or commented on one of our recent shows. He said, "I honestly feel," and how we know how we all are. We're straight to names. We're straight to candidates around here. So Sam said, "I honestly feel like Phil Pressey should be a GM who at this point is an educated gentleman and NBA champion." That's true. Or Lawrence Bowers should be the GM. Those two are still not so far away from Mizzou that they have a great pulse on what players can fit for this program. If we go for an assistant GM, I like MPJ strictly for help with NIL. That's another rabbit hole you could go down, as the Kroenke MPJ. That comment about him not wanting to trade him out of Denver because of the Mizzou connection. It's maybe give some of that money back the other direction. I digress. Payton, I'm just going to ask your thoughts on this, and what about a GM role, what maybe you'd be looking for from whether you have a name or thoughts on any of the ones Sam floated, or just what about the GM spot in general and how you want it to kind of help Mizzou men's basketball kind of grow. Because I think that is the next step, like Kenny kind of said.
I think people are going to be pretty disappointed whenever the GM hire is made, because these hires are made when they're made, they're full-time positions that are legit, just huge jobs. These aren't the assistant GM role, MPJ. You can throw whoever you want in the assistant GM role. That's completely, you see that with programs around the country. some recent examples. Like, it doesn't really matter who the assistant GM is. That's just more of like an advocate thing. Like, Steph Curry is Davidson's assistant GM.
Trae Young's at Oklahoma.
Yeah, like that role doesn't really matter. But the GM thing is like a legit, like, I know Kenny obviously has heard from Dennis about it. Like, this is a real thing. Like, and I don't think that Mizzou's just going to hire an alum to just throw a name out there. Like, Lawrence Bowers makes a little bit of sense because he already is closely associated with the university. He's helped out in a big way just in this new era of college basketball. But I feel like the GM role has to be, Kenny, correct me if I'm wrong. Dennis Gates said he like wanted someone that like has close relationships like with agents and everything, right?
Yes, like I think the thing
Yeah.
there is like he doesn't want to. After that first year, that's when he kind of said like, okay, I need to maybe look into this, leverage my relationships and find those people that have even more connections. You're just branching out. You're pretty much building a tree of connections because that's how this is all driven.
Right. And I don't think you hire just an alum of Mizzou for that role, like just because they're an alum of Mizzou. I think you need to get a legit qualified person. And if that person happens to be from Mizzou, if Dennis Gates feels that's Lawrence Bowers or someone like that, then great. But I have a feeling that we're going to hear a name that is not just like some former NBA player or some former Mizzou alum that's just a big fan of the team. I think this is going to be a legit position that they take very, very serious. Not that I'm saying a Lawrence Bowers hire wouldn't be serious or a Phil Prezi wouldn't be serious. Like, maybe Dennis Gates does feel like those two, like Sam Miz mentioned, would be like good candidates. But I have a feeling that is not the direction we're going to see Mizzou go.
Yeah, I you made a really good point with the like assistant GM thing, which I think Sam is spot on with that part of it. I think you absolutely go after that if those guys are interested in being a part of that role. If a Michael Porter Jr. says, sure, like, let me know what I have to do, sort of how like Trae Young is doing it. Now I'll put it, I looked up Trae Young when he was hired, like the little release that Oklahoma did. This is kind of what it says, that Young's responsibilities will include assisting with the evaluation of high school transfer portal prospects, as well as in helping negotiate player contracts in accordance with NCAA and conference rules and the team's revenue share budget. He will also assist in university fundraising initiatives to help grow support for OU's program. I think Missouri could have a very similar thing if they want to go with that. If they find somebody, we talked to Kareem Rush on this show, who seems very interested in Dennis Gates. He mentioned he was meeting with Dennis Gates, seems very interested on getting sort of reconnected back in with the program. He's even someone you could potentially pursue as a legit GM if you think his, business acumen is there and could help you, if you just because he's, out of basketball now. But if you're talking about current players, especially, I think you're spot on. I look at with Mizzou too for the women's program. Shoot, Sophie Cunningham seems like someone who would jump all over that if they asked her to help out with some of that stuff, and that could grow the women's program immensely. But yeah, I Payton's right. You look at all of these flashy names, the ones, obviously, I'm glad we touched on the assistant GMs first, because I think that's the names people see and think, how do we get involved in those? And I think it is important to keep the alumni and keep the former players involved, and assistant GM role is a good way to do that. But I agree. I think you need someone who is well-rounded and frankly, someone who understands the money in this. Obviously, player relationships are an important thing. But like Kenny said, to keep hitting that nail with the agents is huge. And I think just understanding the money that's in this and what's changing hands and how to have a balance sheet and do all of the things you think an NFL GM has to do is what you need in this job. And that's why you see, and I know this is on the football side, but I was looking at some numbers. Texas Tech is paying their GM in football $500,000. Alabama is paying their football GM $800,000. Like, this is going to be a tertiary to the head coach and top assistant money wise. That's how much these guys are going to get paid. Kenny, I'll let you add anything at the moment. I have other stuff I can spew on about. I want to talk a little bit about Woj at St. Bonaventure for a second, because I think that's an interesting name people might know too. But any thoughts there with the assistant GM stuff, who Mizzou should go after, etc.?
I think from an alumni standpoint, it is massive to get that going right away. Like I think, I'm on your side of, not hiring like a Michael Porter Jr. or Kareem Rush or, someone that has like other responsibilities to be your primary GM or, even Pressey if he, gives up on the NBA and what he's kind of working with
I don't hate that
there.
with him with his coaching credentials,
Yeah.
though. That's interesting to me. Yeah.
Yeah, he has. I mean, he certainly would have connections to agencies as well, and I'm sure he's still represented by one too. So, I mean, that kind of plays in a role. But I think just you have to get the backing of your NBA professional guys that even guys that are out of the professional ranks to support you and kind of be that beacon. Because sooner than later, all these schools will have some big alumni coming back for them. And it's going to be playing a huge role over the next couple of years where you have this backing from these. If someone sees, let's say Carmelo Anthony, becomes even bigger with Syracuse. I mean, I don't even know how that's possible, but everything's named after him there. But, someone of that status, does the same thing at Florida or does the same thing at Georgia to revive that program a little bit. It's just going to continue to happen. So you want to get, in front of that as well, just with your alumni. And Kareem Rush seems to be doing that when he spoke with us about it. One more thing I just, interesting too, just about relationships with agencies and relationships with players, as long as the portal is going to open while the season is going on, while the postseason is going on, that will be massive. It doesn't take away the focus from the player, from the coaches, the assistant coaches, everyone within that player development room, everything in the player personnel room. It does not take their focus off the court. It's going to be more, I mean, they're still going to be involved in everything that they're looking at, the players that they're interested in adding in the transfer portal, but that GM will handle most of that. He will be at the forefront, he or she, and that will be exactly what Dennis Gates kind of talked about, with how the season works. They want to be playing as long as they can. If they get bounced early, they have a slight advantage, but you don't want to be bounced early, but you still want to have that advantage over some teams by having someone who can handle all this for you.
Yeah, it's, and that's where some top assistants are making a hell of a lot of money right now, is they're able to field 16 calls a day while also being in the NCAA tournament and doing all this. But yeah, if you delegate that, and I think that's the big differentiation to make here, is like you having a GM, it's just a very the GM and the assistant GM positions are very different in that, like, you can have beacons for your university at the same time as you have someone who is taking care of that backroom business that now is required to compete at this level. I covered him, so I understand how he was. And again, it's a football example, so maybe it's not the best one. But when I was covering Alabama, their GM's named Courtney Morgan. He's getting paid $800,000 a year. He was a former player, and so he's sort of this, I think, kind of an interesting mold. And that's where someone like a Pressey could get kind of interesting if he can sort of develop the stuff behind the scenes in addition to the player relationships and agent relationships that I'm sure he has. Courtney Morgan was a player at Michigan. He's from Southern California, so he has some recruiting connections there. But he also, after he stopped playing, started his own agency and learned the business side that has now allowed him to translate being productive in this NIL era and dealing with the insane money that is changing hands in college football. That's what I think you need to target. Obviously, this is a relatively new thing. It is and it isn't. It's a new thing in terms of how, I guess, public it is and with the money more openly being exchanged. But I think that's kind of the mold you need to go after, is someone, to me, who understands the business side as much as they can sympathize, whether it's a former player, they can, relate to how players evaluate their situations and things. All that stuff's really interesting. And then, the other, I wanted to mention Woj too. Obviously that was, big news when he left ESPN to go be the GM at St. Bonaventure. That's a guy who understands the agency stuff too. Unfortunately, I don't think Mizzou has a Woj. I don't know if you're convincing. I'm trying to think of a big Mizzou newsbreaker who could come in and be a GM. But, that's another interesting one too. I just think there's a difference to me in who you have as that head honcho running the money stuff behind the scenes. But you can have that alongside these kind of conduits if you're having a Lawrence Bowers, a Kareem Rush, a Michael Porter Jr. I think both are necessary, but I think they probably need to exist in different spaces, if that makes sense. I don't know if either of you two have any other last lingering things, but I'm super excited to see who ends up getting this position, because I think it's super important. And now I'm also going to really go to bat for Kelly Harper to hire Sophie Cunningham as assistant GM, because I think that would be really smart for women's basketball. But any other thoughts from you guys? Anything, I wish I had some name. I feel bad. I now need to retap. Maybe I retap a Duquesne. Maybe there's a secret Duquesne GM. I don't know. I need to look up some names in Dennis's circle to find some. But any thoughts from y'all on the GM kind of sitch, or just questions, things that have come up? I don't know. It's a resounding no from Kenny. Wow.
I thought Payton. Usually Payton goes before me, so I thought he was going to throw something out there.
I should have said a name.
I'll be honest. I'm pretty uninformed on this stuff.
Yeah.
Like I think Mizzou needs a GM. Obviously, it's just the way college athletics are going. I remember people made fun of Arizona State back when they hired Herm Edwards because the way they structured their football program was Herm Edwards would be the coach, and they had someone set up as like a GM that would work more on the player acquisition side. Now, obviously, that didn't work out well for Arizona State because of a good number of things. But that's kind of the way college athletics have just gone in general. And I think Mizzou, it's good that Mizzou basketball is kind of getting out in front of that, because Dennis Gates, I think, needs to be more focused on just the actual coaching aspect and everything like that. And I kind of would expect football at some point to kind of go that way too. I know Dennis or Elijah Drinkwitz has kind of pushed that off for now, but I feel like at a certain point, Mizzou football will probably kind of get into the mix of that as well.
And Missouri has I don't think they might just throw the GM title around or something, but they have guys and gals in the player development side, player personnel that handle a lot of that stuff right now. I think it's probably just getting someone in charge of all that, if that's promoting from internally or going out and finding the best candidate. I think it'll be something they kind of look down the line, but also you're dealing with a lot of, uncertainty with, revenue sharing, roster limits for the next couple of years. So I think, like Drinkwitz said, they're kind of just waiting to see what happens and then go from there on how they're going to approach it moving forward.
I had two things that came up while I was thinking about that. One, the other benefit with a player GM is when you look at people like Steph Curry and Trae Young, if they're hired as an assistant GM, if Mizzou can do that, all that really can also create is, hey, here's the Michael Porter Jr. fund, and there's however many million a year that gets pumped into the basketball program from his earnings and stuff like that. That's one thing that can also create. Two, I just thought y'all might find this kind of interesting. Woj, when he took over at St. Bonaventure, invested in, and I've come to learn this, there's a company out there called Players Health, and it's essentially a insurance company that you pay premium to, and it allows you to essentially put contract incentives in for your players. So say the way Woj articulated it was say, you pay a premium to have this service, and you can put in someone's contract, say they get an extra $25,000 if they're an all SEC player. That company will then pay that money out to where a collective otherwise couldn't. I thought that was kind of interesting. It's sort of forward thinking thing. I only read a couple articles about it, but it was made by former athletes and stuff. Payton shaking his head like an old.
This sucks. That's awful. I hate it. I hate that. This is supposed to be college athletics, man. That's terrible. I really don't like that.
Now you're getting
I get it's a necessary evil at this point, probably, but that's paying another contract company is what you're saying to pay premium. You pay a company to pay your player if they're good.
Do you know how that's kind of like how some jobs work?
This is college athletics.
It's a job.
Now we're just
college athletics we're talking about here. I hate that.
All right, Payton. I'm officially withdrawing Payton's hat from the GM conversation. He will not be Mizzou's GM. Payton, do you have any comment on that?
I didn't want the job to begin with.
Well, there you go. It's interesting. I think the whole space is kind of fascinating, but I think to go all the way back to Sam's point, I think he's spot on in terms of. And I think Dennis, from what we talked about with Kareem Rush, I think Dennis is already starting to get involved with it in keeping those former alums around and having them have a role. I think there is a realistic path to doing that. I think the head of the GM or whatever title it ends up getting is a extremely important position that requires probably someone who has done something similar-ish before. And I think that particularly goes into dealing with the financial aspect, and especially like Kenny said, having kind of those agency connections and being able to lean into the recruiting and the money side of it is I think the overarching take there. But I don't know. Throw your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to see who Mizzou ends up going with. We'll obviously talk all about it. That'll be one of the bigger stories for this offseason, along with Mizzou men's basketball getting some shooters. Please, I would not like to watch a team shoot 31% from the 3-point line next season. That's another note. But with that, there's some GM talk, had some football stuff as well. We'll finish the show off with quick hits. Okay, quick hits time. We finish out the show. We got Jersey of the Week. Kenny, your Jersey of the Week.
My Jersey of the Week goes to Ashton Judd, former Missouri women's basketball player, inked her next letter of intent with the Texas Longhorns. I know a lot of people are a little bit upset about this just on message boards or on Twitter. Texas is a very good team in the SEC, especially this past year. So definitely moving up in the world of college basketball. From your own point of view, Payton, how big is this just for the women's team?
Yeah, she was Ashton Judd, I think, was truly the only player I think Mizzou was really kind of disappointed. They probably disappointed they didn't hang on to. She's a great player, has been a really dynamic, just scoring from all levels type of player since her freshman year. Definitely one of the few players I thought developed really well in the later years of Princeton. I think it's a great pickup for Texas. I do think she's a high-level SEC player. Definitely does not shock me she was able to get to a program at this level.
Yeah, Texas had a good year last year. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I can't be that bummed about it from a standpoint of, or at least not that surprised or angry, given it's a new coach. This is going to happen. Obviously, I'm sure Kelly Harper tried to keep Ashton Judd around. It's a new coach, a new regime. Some players just leave. And unfortunately, yeah, I think she was kind of the major one that you didn't want to lose. But nevertheless, Mizzou, Texas will have some fireworks next year. Kenny. Sorry, not Kenny. Payton. Your
Thank you, Payton. Mizzou women's basketball has another commit. It is Jayla Smith, who was a guard from Purdue the past 4 years. She announced her commitment on Instagram. Only played a couple games in 24-25, I believe, due to an injury is what I saw. But for her career, a 5.4 point per game scorer, less than assist a game, 2 rebounds, probably someone you're maybe hoping can take a leap with more playing time. Definitely more of a rotational piece, I'd say. Kind of funny we mentioned Ashton Judd being gone, because with her being out of the picture for Mizzou, I think it's really just kind of building around Grace Slaughter at this point, who was really good last year for Missouri. But that's another player in the fold for Mizzou women's basketball. They definitely still have a few spots open. I'd have to go back and look and tell you how many it is.
I'm seeing one, I believe, from this list.
I think it's more than that.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. 2024-25. No, yeah, I think it's just one for next year.
I'll double check over,
right,
and I'll get back to you on Sunday on Monday's show.
Yeah, it was interesting too. Kelly Harper mentioned that the team isn't really focused on roster limits right now. They think that's going to be more of a focus for the men's basketball team and football. So they're just going to continue to build out what they can. I do think it's funny that Kelly Harper sends out her bat signal so early sometimes. I think one time it was a day in advance. So I think that can be sometimes annoying for just anyone that reports on this team. But I have one more just quick note on women's basketball. Former Missouri basketball commit Nikki Kirstein followed Robin Pinchton to Wisconsin. She was a commit in the 2025 class.
No surprise there.
I don't know, Kenny. Is it annoying, or dare I say, if you didn't know about the commit ahead, you can get that pre-write ready and have it. I guess then you're on edge until it goes. I don't know. As a beat reporter,
I think it's kind of annoying.
Okay,
because you're just waiting around.
That's fair. No, that's fair. That's fair.
I've run into issues too with just football where it's expected on Wednesday and it comes Friday just because graphics weren't ready or just something wasn't ready to officially do it. But I like it more if Drinkwitz posts his yelling video or the Tiger one for a high school recruit. That happens right away, or he posts it after.
Dennis has also gotten very good about when he actually does post it. It's the day of.
It's like
learn.
5 or 10 minutes before sometimes. for
It's
him, too.
troubleshooting.
Yeah.
Kelly Harper will get it down, I'm sure.
Right. First off season, a lot of ads. It did take some time. My jersey of the week is going to go to Caleb Brown. He has found another new home. He is going to Robert Morris. Of course, the Colonials made the tournament last year. Caleb Brown, 3 years at Mizzou, obviously the younger brother of Kobe Brown. Last year was at Cal State Fullerton, where I closed my tab by accident, but I had his stats. 29 games, 11 starts, 6.2 points, 3.1 rebounds, 1.7 assists in probably his most productive season in college. So good luck at Robert Morris. This is a good program in the Horizon League now. So nice to see Caleb Brown still kicking in college hoops.
It's too bad UTSA went through a coaching change, not this offseason, but this past offseason. Otherwise, we might have seen another run for the Roadrunners at Caleb Brown, but not to be. But good luck to Caleb with the Horizon League champions, mind you.
Mm-hmm.
Pushed Alabama in that tournament game.
They sure did. That's a close game.
He went home. I think that's the biggest thing to me. He's from Huntsville. Like, this is finishing out your college career in your hometown.
Robert Morris is not in
Huntsville,
Alabama. That's just where he's from.
Oh my gosh. I don't know why I thought that. Okay, never mind. That makes sense. That's my bad. No wonder that makes sense why Robert Morris wouldn't be in Horizon. Okay.
This is my wild or kind of funny tournament thing where you see this happen. So Robert Morris is from Pittsburgh, and they played their first tournament game in Cleveland against Alabama, and they were like 2 hours from Cleveland, whereas Alabama, who is a much higher seed, was like 13 or whatever. Sometimes
Robert Morris is not exactly Pittsburgh. It's in a suburb called Carnot Moon.
Okay.
When you search Robert Morris, I just did it because I felt bad about spewing a lie. It says Pittsburgh. It says Pittsburgh, PA.
It's in Pittsburgh.
Private university in Carnot Moon, Pennsylvania.
Located in Pittsburgh, spread across 230 scenic acres. Robert Morris University.
Well,
combines.
you know where it's not? It's not in Huntsville, Alabama.
It's not in Huntsville, Alabama.
Well, you were wrong too, Payton. I think that's the thing. I think Jack is the only one right here. You just made a fool of yourself like I did.
I did watch Robert Morris last season. I know Morris. All right,
I
next.
like no capping. He's the main bird.
Shawnee's main bird of the week. Kenny, your main bird.
My main bird of the week goes to Corey Flagg Jr. Got a mini camp deal with the Kansas City Chiefs. Bird connection. He was a Stork when he was with the Miami Hurricanes before he came over.
You've been milking that.
I know, this back-to-back weeks. Also, like an interesting thing here. I don't have it pulled up in front of me. I wish I did. But from the reporter, Payton, if you can find it, I think you have it saved somewhere. But he had like a private workout after pro day with Mizzou. His little private workout was with Christian Williams and Johnny Walker with a scout from the Denver Broncos.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The Broncos ended up signing 2 of them. Corey Flagg was the one that wasn't signed, and he's just going to go to minicamp with the Chiefs. I also think he got a minicamp invite with the 49ers, if I'm not mistaken. So he went with the closer one.
There you go.
It was a tweet from Chris Thomason, who covers the Broncos for the Denver Gazette. He tweeted, Broncos defensive line coach Jamar Cain went to Missouri's pro day on March 21st and then had a private workout with edge rusher Johnny Walker, defensive tackle Christian Williams, and linebacker Corey Flagg. The Broncos, of course, did end up signing Walker and Williams. So Flagg winds up closer.
Yeah, the other team was the Lions, not the 49ers. So he chose to stay a little bit closer with the Chiefs.
There you go. Good luck at the minicamp. Corey Flagg. Payton, your main bird.
My main bird of the week is going to be the main bird himself, Sean East. He is going
No, I like
to
no
play
capping. He's the
basketball.
main bird.
Correct.
He deserved another one.
Stingers of the CEBL, I believe is the name of the league. It's up in Canada, obviously. If you're wondering how I found this tweet with 3 likes, it's because Sean East did post on his story that he was signing with Edmonton. So I went and found a tweet for your viewers' viewing pleasure. And there you see they're followed by Sean East. So
Inaugural season was May 2019 for the Edmonton Stingers. Very new team. So
yeah.
Maybe a chance to go in like their all-time scorer if he sticks with the Stingers.
This is followed by Sean East's dad. This isn't Sean East.
Oh shoot. Dang it. I thought
I've made that. I've made
Yeah.
that mistake before too. His real one it's like Rise Sean, or that might be his.
I thought it was
dad.
NBA Sean.
It might be, yeah.
Oh yeah, if you click on that tweet there, Kenny, that graphic, there's a couple names you might know on it. Okay, he went past it. It's okay. There it is. Yeah, you see Actually, I don't recognize any of these names besides Sean East. I thought I recognized one
Wait.
yesterday.
No.
No.
I know Cameron McGriff, I think. I forget where he was in college somewhere. I recognize his name. All right. My main bird of the week is going to be Luke Northweather. My bird connection, first and foremost. He was, of course, a Blair Oaks Falcon, and he's coming home. He officially signed, won the, as you see in the tweet, 2022 Gatorade Player of the Year. In the state of Missouri, went to Oklahoma. He has officially signed with Mizzou, of course, joined them in the transfer portal after 2 seasons with the Sooners. Played 30 games last year, about 2.5 points, 1.5 rebounds. So officially welcome to Luke Northweather for Mizzou men's basketball. Still going to be really interesting to see how they use him, but I digress.
If at all.
That's
Best thing,
2 official ones now.
2 official ones, yes, with him and Javon Porter.
Sure are taking their time with these.
It's twice now. Best thing you learned, Payton.
Best thing I learned this week, another bonus bird almost, because Jamarian Wayne, who we talked about a little earlier in the show, made a little cameo appearance in Kenny's transfer portal recap. Jamarian Wayne is a Coastal Carolina Chanticleer, so good for Jamarian Wayne. Obviously a supreme athlete. I mean, they were moving him all across the field. You hear the coaches have always said great things about him. I don't think there was any real dislike of him, but now he gets a chance to hopefully start at Coastal Carolina. I'd assume he'd stick at defensive back at this point. So good luck to him there. Sunbelt's not a terrible league anymore. It's not a joke league. Obviously, it's not Power 4 or anything, but still decent competition down there. Hopefully, he can create some buzz around himself again.
Indeed. Best of luck to Jamarian Wayne. Kenny, what did you learn this week?
Best thing I learned this week, I'm kind of surprised this already hasn't happened, but Tamar Bates officially declared for the NBA draft. He played in the Portsmouth Invitational. He played in some other postseason just games, and finally going to put his name out there that he's going to the NBA draft. Maybe an opportunity to stick around if a house settlement clears any new eligibility, like some other guys like Josh Gray are looking at, some other basketball players and football players. But he's going to pursue the professional ranks, and I think of anyone on the team last year that ran out of eligibility, he probably has the best shot of making it on a G League team somewhere, or just even in the NBA. So it's just one of those things, just kind of housekeeping for him.
He'll get a summer league gig. I'm pretty confident in that. I think so. I think a team will invite him at least for summer league, and then we'll see what happens from there. But yeah, best of luck to Tamar in the pros. I'm hopeful for him. He can, he's got some nice NBA skills, just a matter of the grind at this point. The best thing I learned this week, bracketology is back, is what I've learned this week. Joe Lenardi posted a way too early bracketology. I don't really know how serious you can take this, but Mizzou did make it in, so I'm using it as an excuse to talk some way too early bracketology. Lenardi put Mizzou as a number 6 seed, which is of course what they got this past season. He had him in the Midwest region, which actually would be a really fun story if Mizzou, if that works out and they stay in the Midwest region and go to the second weekend. It is in Chicago, which would be pretty fun for Dennis Gates, but has them playing against number 11 seed San Diego State in Oklahoma City, which on paper would also be a good draw location-wise for Mizzou. But we all saw how that happened last year. It's drivable. Be there. Mizzou is in the bracket as of April 2025.
Why is Tampa a location for the Midwest?
It's not based around that. They don't do the
still, like, that's just crazy to me.
But they do the way the first round sites work is one site gets 2 different regions. So Tampa also has another one for like the East or the South.
Boy, man, Missouri getting a 6 seed playing a mid-major league 11 seed at a location that is closer to Columbia than where the 3 seed is. That ring any bells for anybody? That sound familiar to anyone? Oh, and that 11 seed, San Diego State would almost certainly be defense first. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Does that sound like a familiar scenario to anybody here? Anybody? Can anyone pick out that situation from the past, please?
The top 4 seeds in that region would be Purdue, Kentucky, Iowa State, who Payton mentioned, and Auburn.
I don't want this draw at all. I don't.
It's April, man.
I hope they play in Tampa. I'd rather go to the Gasparilla Bowl.
Yeah, they do play it in the Gasparilla Bowl in the stadium, actually.
No,
Tampa
they
region.
don't.
They play it outside.
Yeah, they do it outside. So that's all I have. I'm glad I could make Payton's day with that one.
Yeah, what a joke of the day. Today's show. Guys, what was it? The one I was going to pick. Yeah, where do fingers grow on palm trees? That's where they grow.
In
Boom.
Tampa? On palm trees in Tampa? Where you're going to be for Mizzou against Boise
They grow in
State
the palm.
in an 8-9 game?
They grow in the palm.
Am I right, Payton?
I already said on palm trees. I said the answer.
Payton, what about like a
Grow in the palm.
7-10 and they play like a 29-4 San Francisco team that like wins the WCC?
I'd be okay with that.
Okay.
That'd be fun.
I'm trying to think of scenarios he'd hate the most. I took the bracket away, so we'll do this later. All right. That's the show. Thanks for the GM comment, Sam. Please comment other stuff.
San Diego State has like a clear star too. Magoon I mean, like,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
almost 1-1. Like, are you?
Yeah. He came back, didn't he? He's probably going to win Player of the Year in the Mountain West.
Oh, T.O. Barrett, what are you driving towards the basket for?
All right. Please comment other discussion topics if you want to hear them. We'll talk about them.
Is he taking a 360 jumper right now?
If you enjoy this, we will talk more brackets. If you guys,
it's
comment,
a 3-point game.
Everyone comment bracket. If we get enough comments, we will just do way too early brackets and we'll make Payton analyze matchups. That's what I'll do. I'll make some for him. All right. That'll do it for the unwritten rule. See you guys later. Bye.